Understanding God's Plan, Lesson 12. You can see the Lesson 12 and part of Understanding God's Plan. So we're going to go to where we've gotten to with the children of Israel, how they've gotten to the Promised Land, and these maps are going to be a little off because of our technical problems. But anyway, I wanted you to see the different tribes, where they were settled, because we're going to talk about a period of time in Israel's history called in the book of Judges. It's the time of the Judges. And that period of time lasted about 400 years, roughly 400 years. And I probably got that on a slide here somewhere, if you can see part of it once I get there. So we're going to go to the book of Judges because they have gotten to the Promised Land. They've settled into their different tribes. They don't have a king at this particular time. They don't have anybody to rule over them or to govern them as a body of people. They're individual tribes, but yet they're one nation. So God sent judges, and I'm going to read this to you. You'll have to. After the death of Joshua, the Israelites inquired of the Lord, "Who will be the first to fight for us against the Canaanites?" The Lord answered, "Judah is to go. I have handed the land over to him." This is Judges 1:1, which you can't see up there. This is Judges 1:1. So he's telling them the tribe of Judah is to go in first. They're the ones who are to lead you in there. And I've got here that Israel entered the land here under Joshua. From the death of Joshua to the time of the first kings is about 400 years. So that period of time that's in the book of Judges is about 400 years. So you can look at Israel. Now this is not going to be exact, but the time of the Judges is about 400 years. The time of the kings about 400 to 500 years. So you're talking about the way it's divided up until we get to the time of the first century when we have the New Testament. So that's a 400-year period of time that we're looking at here. And I'll ask you these questions since you can't see them there. Why are these leaders referred to as judges? We'll talk about that. What is a judge? What is a judge? When you hear the term judge, what do you think of? We think about the legal system, the judges that we have there. When they set up our judiciary in the Constitution back in 1787, they established the judiciary, and it has grown from there. So we have the Supreme Court, and then we have the state courts, we have the district courts, we have all the different type of courts, but we have judges there that make judgments concerning cases, like you said, who's right, who's wrong when it comes into certain things, and to keep it on a legal basis. That's not what we're talking about when we're talking about judges here. So a good definition of the judges here, and I'll read this to you. The root word it comes for to judge means pronounce sentence, which we understand by implication, to vindicate or punish, we understand that, by extension to govern. So they're a governing influence, a governing body, somebody that comes in and governs what they do and helps protect them and lead them in the way that they should go and deliver them out of trouble when they got in trouble, because you know the children of Israel are going to get into trouble because they hadn't paid attention from the beginnings. They're not about to start now. So we go to Judges 2:16. It says, "The Lord raised up judges who saved them from the power of the marauders." And this is Judges 2:16. So in Judges 2:16, he tells us what they're there for is to deliver them from the people that's causing them trouble. Why did the children of Israel get into trouble? Why did they need judges? Well, let's ask this question. Why is the nation of Israel important? Why is it important to keep this nation in existence? Why was God protecting them as a nation? Pardon me? Well, it's a place, it's a birthright, it's a country to bring the Messiah into the world. without this covenant that was started way back with Abraham. And I know it seems like I keep going back to Abraham, but it all does. It ties back to Abraham. Because the covenant with Abraham that became passed the birthright down, and now we're into a nation. This nation needs to be kept in existence until Jesus can come into the world, and they try everything they can to give up what God had given them. And we'll see more of that as we go. Now we'll go to Judges 2:1. It says, the angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochum and said, I brought you out of Egypt and led you into a land I had promised to your fathers. I also said, I will never break my covenant with you. And you can see part of that right here. You're not to make a covenant with the people who are living in this land. So he's telling them, you don't make a covenant with them. Now, why wouldn't they make a covenant with them? He can tell them here in just a second. You are not to make a covenant with the people who are living in this land, and you are to tear down their altars. But you have not obeyed me. What is this you have done? So he said, you have not paid attention to what I have told you. I told you when you came in here to not make a covenant with any of these people, to get rid of these people, to destroy these people, and take over this land. Why was God so vicious towards these people? Why did he want them destroyed? Pardon me? They worshipped other gods, but why is that important? Because it can influence them and turn them away. And if the covenant of Abraham is broken, then the birthright is broken, and the tie that we have to bringing the Messiah into the world, to bring salvation to everybody from Adam and Eve right on through into the end of time, we had to get Jesus into the world. And if you break that covenant, then that won't happen. So he told them to do that. He said, you haven't done it. He says, therefore, I now say, I will not drive out. Now listen to what he's telling them. I will not drive out these people before you. They will be thorns in your sides, and their God will be a trap for you. When the angel of the Lord had spoken these words to all the Israelites, the people wept loudly. So they named the place Bochum and offered sacrifices there to the Lord. So all of a sudden, when God comes to them and he challenges them with this, listen, I told you this. I told you not to make covenants with them. I told you to drive them out. I told you not to live with them. You couldn't stay with them. And as long as you did that, and as long as you did what I told you, I would drive the people out. You haven't, so I'm going to quit driving them out. I'm going to let them stay here, and they're going to torture you from here on out. That's the way I would have put it, but that's not exactly the way it's said there. Why did God rescue them? Judges 2:1 again. The angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochum and said, I brought you out of Egypt and led you into the land I had promised to your fathers. I also said, I will never break my covenant with you. He said, I will never break my covenant with you. He had plenty of time to break his covenant with these people, but he said he wouldn't do it, and he had a reason. Judges 2:2. You are not to make a covenant with the people who are living in this land. You are to tear down their altars. But you have not obeyed me. What is this you have done? Therefore, I now say, I will not drive out these people before you. There will be thorns in your sides, and their gods will be a trap for you. And so how did God rescue them? He said he raised up judges to rescue them. Now, I wish you can kind of see this. This is what you'll see with Israel throughout the time of the judges, and really throughout the time of the kings to a large degree, but especially during the time of the judges. Israel rebels, God disciplines them, Israel repents, and God delivers them. He sends a judge to deliver them. So that every time he needs to, he raises up a judge. He didn't establish a birthright. He didn't say, I'm going to establish a judge, and when this judge dies, their oldest son will be the next one to follow. He didn't do any of that. He raised up each one separately at a different time to take care of them and to deliver them. And it says that God sends a judge to deliver them. But what happens? Israel rebels. And then so this cycle goes on and on and on throughout the judges, and you'll see it as we talk about it tonight. Now, this is supposed to be a list of the judges of Israel, and you can see Jephthah, Ibzan, Elon, Abdon, and Samson. Now, you've heard of Samson. The ones you can't see over here are Othniel, Ehud, Shamgar, Deborah, Gideon, Tola, and Jair. Now, how many of those do you remember? Have you heard of? You heard of Samson? Do you remember Gideon? Because Gideon, the two that most people will remember are Gideon and Samson. The rest of these you don't remember much of. Now, I hope you won't be able to see much of this, but this gives you an idea of, I think I've got most of them on there. You'll see these different ones that I have named here and the tribes that they're from. They're not all from the same tribe. They're from different tribes. Like Gideon here is from Issachar. Elon is from tribe of Zebulun. Ehud is down here in Manasseh. We have Tola and Manasseh. We have Ephraim here. We have Abdon here. Deborah is from Benjamin. Samson is from the tribe of Dan, almost into Judah, but it's from the tribe of Dan. And so when you're reading through the book of Judges, it'll tell you where they're from. It doesn't dawn on you that that's spread all out, all the way over the countryside to different places in these in the nation of Israel. So they don't all come from the same place, but God raises them up as He needs them, where He needs them at the particular time. Yes, the only woman judge was Deborah.
So was that the tribes that didn't drive everyone out? All those? Or over time they kept being in defiance and then he had to have another judge?
None of the tribes drove everybody out.
Oh, I thought you just said some of them.
No, they drove some of the people out, but nobody, there wasn't a single tribe that accomplished everything they were supposed to. If you remember back, and you might not, but back when we were talking in Joshua, when they came into the promised land, that the tribes that wanted to stay over here on this side, you see Manasseh, Gad, and Reuben over here, they wanted to stay on this side of the river, and he told them, you can stay, you can have your tribes there, and you can have that land, but what you must do is you must go across the Jordan and help everybody else conquer there. So in other words, it wasn't like this one goes conquers their section, this one goes conquer. They were all in this together. It doesn't break down exactly how they did it and so on, but they were together supposed to help each tribe to conquer and establish and settle their particular area. No. So they really didn't, none of them accomplished what they were supposed to. The nation of Israel, and really this would sound unfair, but really as far as God was concerned, He told them it's the 12 tribes of Israel. They are one nation, there are 12 tribes. So even if one tribe didn't accomplish what they were supposed to, they're still, the nation of Israel hasn't accomplished what they're supposed to.
Well, you know, it said that trip was supposed to be 11 days.
Pardon me?
11 days from Egypt to the promised land. 11 days, is that what it's supposed to start with?
Mm-mm. Before they got to the promised land, it was about 50 days before they got to the place where the law was given. It took them 40 years. In a commentary, yes. A commentator would probably say, yes, you could travel from here to there if you went straight from there and traveled the whole time. Well, they didn't even before they disobeyed and spent 40 years in the wilderness. They still didn't go straight. They started disobeying at the very beginning. When they got to the Red Sea, and then they crossed the Red Sea, and they got over to the other side, and they, keep in mind, they would camp, and they'd go into camp. And they would stay there for a period of time. And a period of time, like when Moses was up on the mountain, they were in camp for day after day after day. And he hadn't come back for a while. And so that's when they decided they wanted Aaron to make them a golden calf, make them a god so that they could worship their new God, because Moses was gone. And so the other God must not be real, so whatever their excuse was. And Moses came back. So all that took a period of time. And that was about 40 days. Most of the things, 40 is a number you see continue to reoccur in the Old Testament and even into the New Testament when it comes to a lot of things. Just like you see the number 7, the number appears a lot. Number 12 appears a lot. So you have number 6. You have different numbers that I don't like to get too deeply into that, because then people get carried away with numerology, and every time they see a number in the Bible, they think they go to look into what they have special meaning that has, and it doesn't necessarily have a special meaning. So anyway, the first judge was Othniel, and he was either the nephew or the brother of Caleb. He was who was one of the 12 spies of Israel. After the Spirit of the Lord came to him, Othniel freed the Israelites from the king Cushan Rishathaim, who ruled the region of Aram Naharaim, part of Mesopotamia. In other words, a place between the rivers. So the Othniel was the first one that came in, and he was that came in to be the first judge. He's right here. He was the first one that was called on, and he was called on to deliver them from these kings here, and he did. And he ruled for 40 years. I don't know if you can see that. You can't see that. He was alive for 40 years, and as long as he was alive, Israel did pretty good. But he died. Ehud was the next one. After Othniel died, the Israelites fell back again into disobedience, which we can expect. It says in Judges 3:12, it says, the Lord gave Eglon, king of Moab, power over Israel. And we get back into this same cycle that we had looked at before. So what did the Israelites do when Moab came in and took over their lands and took them over and basically enslaved them? What did they do? Then they repented again. They said, we're so sorry. If you'll come help us out, you've heard that before, right? Again, the Israelites cried out to the Lord, and this is in Judges 3:5, by the way. Again, the Israelites cried out to the Lord. He gave them a deliverer, Ehud, a left-handed man. I don't know why it says that, but it tells me here. It's the only one that's listed, left-handed man, the son of Gera, the Benjaminite. So he was from the tribe of Benjamin. The Israelites sent him tribute to Eglon, king of Moab. Now, let me tell you what happened here. I'll scroll this up. But let me tell you what happens here. Israel gave him, they decided to pay off the king. And they sent Ehud to do it. So he goes there, and you can't see what he did in here, but what he did when Ehud got here, he hid a sword in his robes, and he went in to talk with the king, and he said to the king, yeah, I'm tickled to see you and this type of thing, and he said, I've got something secret I need to tell the king, so if the rest of you would, if you'll just could leave and leave us alone for a little while. And he said, so I can talk to the king. And it says, and if it doesn't say it there, the Bible says he was a very fat man, is what it says about the king. And you'll see a reason why in just a second. And when he left, Ehud comes up close to him. He said, here's the secret I want to tell you. And he pulled out his sword, and he stabbed him in the stomach till it went down to the hilt, and everything was buried inside because he was so fat, because it says that in there. So the king died naturally, and he sneaked out the back. Said in the privacy of the king's upper room, Ehud told Eglon, I have a message from God for you. It's in Judges 3:20. He said, then he plunged his sword into the king's belly. It says, even the handle sank in after the blade, and his bowels discharged, it says. Ehud, doesn't that sound like a beautiful picture? Ehud did not pull the sword out, and the fat closed in over it. So this is a pretty hefty fella for it to be able to bury a whole sword. And it says sword. We don't know how, if it was a sword this long or what it was, but he left it in there. Anyway, with the king dead, the Israelites, they spring a surprise attack. And he killed 10,000 of the soldiers and conquered Moab. So God had come in again, sent a judge, and delivered them. So they were nice and obedient from there on out, right? Does it say there? Yeah. There was peace there for 80 years until Ehud died. And Ehud died, and then comes Shamgar. I don't know if you can see that. Son of Anath was a judge. We hear very little about them, and you can see part of it here, Judges 3:31. After Ehud came Shamgar, the son of Anath, who struck down 600 Philistines with an ox goad. He too saved Israel. And you can't really see it here because of the picture, but on the end of this, an ox goad, normally it had like a hooked piece on the end or a straight piece on the end, and it was about 8 feet long. And this is what it says he killed all these 600 Philistines with, was an ox goad. 600. That's pretty good work for one fellow. Then we have Deborah. It says, Deborah summoned Barak. Some people say that Barak was one of the judges as well, but I don't see where he was. In my opinion, Deborah was the one that was called to be the judge, and she called Barak to help out. The son of Abinoam to command the Israelite army, telling him God would give Sisera and his army into his hand. Now remember that name, Sisera. Barak said he would only go if Deborah went with him, and Deborah prophesied, and this is her prophecy down here in Judges 4:9. It says, certainly I will go with you, but because of the course you are taking, the honor will not be yours, for the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. And he did. Sisera, when they started losing, and he could see that they were losing, he went on the run, and this woman was this is my way of telling it, she was in the door of her tent. She said, come on and hide in here. So she hid him, put a blanket over him. When she put a blanket over him, she took a tent peg and drove it through his head and killed him. So you don't visit that lady if you're the enemies, because she'll take care of you. So anyway, a woman did her in. Judges 6:1, the Israelites did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Can you believe it? After all this, they go back and did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord handed them over to Midian for 7 years. So Moab controlled them for a year. Now we got Midian for 7 years. And that's where Gideon comes along. And you all remember the story of Gideon. I love the story of Gideon. It's one of my favorite in the Bible. His name means hewer, slasher, hacker is what his name means. And in Judges 6:11, it says, the angel of the Lord came, and he sat under the oak that was in Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite. His son Gideon was threshing, now catch this, he was threshing wheat in a wine vat. Why would he be threshing wheat in a wine vat? That's not what a wine vat is for. And it tells you here, in order to hide it from the Midianites. Then the angel of the Lord, he's hiding in a wine vat, threshing wheat. And an angel comes up, and the angel says, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. Now I can just see Gideon saying, who is he talking to? I'm hiding in a wine vat to thresh a little bit of wheat, and here he is calling me a mighty warrior. Then as you follow the story through in Judges, the 6th chapter of Judges, first thing he does is he says, I don't want to be sure. God told him, the angel told him, you're going to go conquer all these Midianites, their entire army. And so he said, I trust you, but he said, let's put out a fleece. This is where we got the term putting out a fleece. He says in Joshua 6:37, if there is dew only on the fleece and all the ground is dry, then I will know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said. So that's what he tells him, and that happened. So he comes back in verse 39. He says, allow me one more test with the fleece, but this time let the fleece make the fleece dry, and let the ground be covered with dew. So he did it the other way, and it turned out the same way. So then we go in the 7th chapter of the book of Judges. And I'll kind of tell you what happens here. And you know, he called for warriors to go in and follow him into battle to deliver them from the Midianites. And 32,000 people shows up. And God says, this is too many. There's too many, because if you have this many in there, you won't think it's me that delivered you. This is basically what he told him. He said, I want you to tell anybody that's afraid, if they're fearful or they're trembling, go home. 22,000 went home. Out of the 32,000, 22,000 went home. I'd have probably been in that 22,000. He said, if you're fearful or trembling, go home. It would probably been me. So, most of us, I'm quite sure. But then he said, that number's still too many. We've got to get it down from there. He said, have them go get them a drink. He says, the ones that dip up the water with their hands, and then the ones who bend down and drink the water. The ones who bend down to drink the water, send all them home. And when he finished, they had 300 left. 300 is all they had left. He started out with 32,000. He's down to 300. Joshua 8:33. Well, we know what happened. They went in, if you don't remember the story, he gave each one of them a jar, they call it, depending on which version, which translation you're reading, and they put a candle or some says candle, some says lamp. They put it in that, and they had then they all gathered around, they divided up and surrounded the Midian camp, and they had at this particular sound, they all smashed that, and you had this great flash of light, and the Midianites wound up killing each other. So it conquered them without having to do anything. Yes. When they say jar in the scripture like that, they didn't have glass jars. Yes, it was like a clay, but we would say a pot or something of that nature, but they called them a jar. So that's what happened. Then we have Tola, because they turned from God again. He's one of the minor judges, only because there's not very much written about him. 23 years, I think it was. In fact, it says that up there. 23 years after the death of Abimelech, who was Gideon's son. Gideon's sons, after Gideon died, they decided that they would kind of they didn't do a very good job. So anyway, after they died, so Tola was of the tribe of Issachar. You like his dad's name? Dodo was his name, or his grandfather was a man named Dodo. So he came in for a short period of time. Then we have Joshua 10:6. So I'm trying to get through all these because I think we just need to get a picture here. Joshua 10:6. Then the Israelites again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Would you ever guess that? They worshiped the Baals and the Ashtoreths and the gods of Aram, Sidon and Moab, the gods of the Ammonites and the Philistines. They abandoned Yahweh and did not worship him. So the Lord's anger burned against Israel, and he sold them to the Philistines and the Ammonites. So here they were back where they started before, when if they'd just been obedient to God and worshiped God, they'd been all right. So Judges 10:9 says, Israel was greatly oppressed, so they cried out to the Lord, saying, see, they get in a jam, what do they do? Do they sound like us or what? We have sinned against you. We have abandoned our God and worshiped the Baals. That's just Judges 10:9. You go down to the 13th verse, it says, but you have abandoned me and worshipped other gods. This is God talking to them. Therefore, I will not deliver you again. Go and cry out to the gods you have chosen. But the Israelites says, we have sinned. Deal with us as you see fit. Only deliver us today. So they got rid of the foreign gods among them and worshiped the Lord, and he became weary of Israel's misery. It doesn't say he decided, he just got tired of listening to them. That brings Jair on the scene. As he is followed by Jair of Gilead, who led Israel 22 years. He had, get this now, he had 30 sons who rode 30 donkeys. They controlled 30 towns in Gilead, which to this day is called Havoth Jair. And when Jair died, he was buried in Cammon. Guess what? When he died, they turned away from God again. Then we have Jephthah. Jephthah was a mighty warrior, the son of a prostitute. His father Gilead also had other sons and so on. And when he was called to deliver them. Then we have Ibzan. It was the next one, like that name, Ibzan. If you ever have any buddy you want to name an interesting name. He was of Bethlehem. He led Israel for 7 years. He's only mentioned in Judges 12, 8 through 10. So he judged them, and they naturally they turned back again. Then you have Elon of the tribe of Zebulun. All it says about him is in Judges 12, 11 and 12. It says, after him Elon the Zebulunite led Israel 10 years. Then Elon died and was buried in Ajalon in the land of Zebulun. So that's all it says about him. So we don't know what he did. We don't know how he did what he did, but we know he did that long. And what did Israel do? When he died, they turned back again and started worshiping other gods, and Abdon comes along. And this is what it says about him. He had 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode on 70 donkeys. He led Israel 8 years. Then Abdon, son of Hillel, died and was buried at Pirathon in Ephraim, in the hill country of the Amalekites. And that's all it says about him in the book of Judges. So we have a lot of territory there that it just says. So I'm just trying to get you to get a picture of where they are. When you think of the book of Judges, you don't necessarily put names to the judges and how many there was, but in case you want to know, there's 12. Every time Israel repented, God showed them mercy. Judges 21:25. This is the last verse in the book of Judges. It says, in those days Israel had no king. Everyone did as they saw fit. Everyone. God would establish with them. He would. You got questions there. Any questions?